Mr. Stanglass back to you with another special project, but what is going to be making this project so special? You are going to have to find out here in just a moment. Let's get started. Okay, so this is today's little project. It's just a simple copper foil window we're going to be doing. Alright, so we've got a few colors picked out here. I'm going to start by marking all of my pieces with the number that is corresponding to the pattern. Doing little panels like this is great for beginners to kind of get their feet wet. So let's go ahead and start with this number 4 glass. We're going to start out by giving ourselves a nice straight edge. And I went ahead and marked these two lines on this glass because this is the direction of the texture. So I want that to be vertical. I don't want it to be in kind of some random orientation. So we're going to give ourselves a nice straight line here. So we are going to be cutting just barely inside of the line. And in fact, for copper foil, I like to cut pretty much on the line. So that's what we're going to be doing here. It gives us a little bit of a tighter fit. So normally what I'll do is I'll line up my straight edge right up to the line, get the center of my scoring tool, see that little tiny wheel right there? We're going to get that right perfectly in the center. Oh, make sure not to move your glass around because once you set it down, you don't want to be moving after you're orienting your straight edge. Even pressure, you want that nice sound. Using your hands to apply pressure on each side of the score, index fingers underneath it, pushing up. See that? Okay, now we've got this piece cut onto two edges, so we're going to line it up in there, and really what I think I'm going to do is go ahead and sort of mark this glass where the cut lines are because it's going to be kind of difficult to be scoring this and it might be moving around underneath my tool, so I don't really want to do that. I just want to go ahead and kind of score it, connect the dots. Alright, another piece. Okay, we're going to make sure we keep our pattern free of debris. Here we are. So that's pretty good. And so we're going to do with that, check mark. We know it's been cut. Now we're going to want to separate each piece of glass that's been cut from the rest. So let me grab a box. I'm going to start placing them right in there. So let's move on to the same number 4 glass. We're going to do this one next. And would you look at that? So our cutoff piece actually did fit. So we're going to get a pretty good yield from this glass. And this one, so before we had the direction going this way. Now this one, see, I've got it marked here. So it's going to be going this way. And I'm okay with that. Now we're going to be orienting this thing, making sure that the two edges that we have pre-cut are going to fit nicely within the pattern. Score one edge, and I'm going to go ahead and try to score this. I think I can kind of maneuver it without moving the pattern or moving the piece of glass. So that gives us about the right spacing. Go ahead and cut that. Okay, we've got this piece here. It's got a really kind of small score, so we're going to use the grocers. I can't really get that with my hand. It's way too small. Let's go ahead and sweep this off. See how that kind of veered off right there? You're seeing a little bit more white inside that black line. All around here, it's pretty good. I think that's definitely going to pass. If you look closely, we sort of have a little shard there, so we're going to want to make sure to grind that down. The copper foil will not stick very well to that. Mark that one complete in the box. So this glass, it has more of a textured and smoother side. So we're going to want to be sure this is the texture side. You can kind of see the light there. So this side is smoother. We're going to want to cut on this side. See, it's almost a little bit more reflective. This is duller. This is more reflective. That's another way you can kind of tell if it's the smoother or rougher side. So we're going to want to find two edges that are going to fit nicely, and we did here. See, that fits pretty good on both. Normally, something like this, I'm going to want to try to take off as little as possible. So I'm going to want to cut this part off because then I'll only have a small salvage piece. Versus if I cut it this way, I'm going to have a big salvage piece. I want to avoid that. Let's make sure this piece is oriented on the pattern properly. Setting down the cutter just inside, or just on the line, really. It's kind of more what I'm going for here. One nice score. And then this is such a small line. I'm actually just going to go ahead and freehand score this. Now, in theory, you know, are you going to get probably a better cut with the straight edge? Probably, but it's kind of a marginal return that's really not too big. So you can do that, save a lot of time, maybe not get the best cut in the world necessarily, but get it definitely good enough to not only pass, but still look good. Now this is a really small piece. I'm not even going to bother with the straight edge. When the piece gets to be really small, sometimes a straight edge can actually make it a lot harder. So sure not to handicap yourself in that way. You want to make sure to give yourself the best chance of doing work, not only efficiently, but well. So we're going to sort of make sure this is right on both of those lines. We want a very tight cut pattern for this panel. Got one cut there. One cut here, pretty much right on those lines. And you can see this cutter is oiled up. See all that oil on those score lines? So that's important to make sure to keep your cutter oiled. Just break those pieces off. Way too small to do with the hands. That is a tight cut right there. I think that will do just fine. Let's see. Yeah, I think I am actually going to go ahead and grind that down. I'll set that aside. And normally what I'll do when I need to grind something down is I'll add a little black on the edges of where it needs to be ground down. So now I know, okay, I need to hit these two sides. And then we're trying to cut barely inside of that line, maybe even just slightly on the line, but mostly just barely inside of that line is what we're going for. Another way you can break this, see that score line there? You can just tap right on it. Boom, there it is. Now here you can see it's got this fractured edge. We definitely need to grind that down before trying to copper foil that. That will definitely give us some problems. So this fits pretty much perfectly there. I'm going to go ahead and actually flip this over and do a little black right there. We'll check that off. We'll put it in our grind stack. Got that. Got it. So we're going to, again, orient the two edges, and we want to cut to have the smallest waste pieces possible normally, and that's what we're going to do here. So we're going to orient that 90 degrees from where it was originally, line up our straight edge like usual. Consistent and even pressure. That's one. Let's go ahead and rotate that, get the other. Now in this case, I've already got a score running this way, so I'm going to score the glass this way and stop it at that score. That way it won't break through, wasting glass. So that's how we're going to do that. For a very nice, efficient cut. Now you'll notice too, when I scored that, it didn't make the normal sound. It actually makes almost like a muffled sound. So not all glass sounds the same. That is normal. So that piece looks great. Okay, we've got the cutoff piece. This one will just barely work out. Hear that? It's really a muffled sound. Okay, again, we've got this kind of tough one to break by hand. I don't want to hurt myself, so we're going to use the grosers. We've got the flat end top, rounded end bottom. We do have a bit of some fractured looking edges right here and here. We're going to have to grind those down, so we'll put that in the grind pile. See how that has more of a fractured edge right here, so we want to make sure to flat that down. Now we did that pretty quick and easy. And there you have it. No more fractured edge. Okay, we've got our glass cleaner now. These pieces are so small, we are just going to spray our clean rag here and then wipe down the pieces. And hopefully the ones that we do in the beginning will be nice and dry by the time we're ready to start foiling. Now, we're going to want to try to avoid touching the edges as much as possible. That's because that's the place where the foil is actually going to be adhering to. So we want to make sure to wipe that down and then try to avoid touching. When we're grabbing the pieces, we try to grab it right on the faces, kind of like this. We are using a silverback foil because we're planning to do a non-patinaed stained glass window. That means we're going to leave it the bare solder finish, and which is really just a silver finish. And so we'll be able to see the backing of the copper through the glass. So we wanted to match that so that it really doesn't stick out at all. All the glass we did today is transparent. That's why it was so easy to cut on the pattern too. So definitely a good glass for beginners. You want to try to spend as little time doing things like cutting up patterns, tracing them, and then cutting on it that way. To me, that's maybe not the best way to develop your skills. Although, if you are going to be using opaque glass, you really don't have a whole lot of options if you can't see it through the light table. Okay, we are at the point we just got all of the glass cut, and now I'm going to show you my little copper foiling setup. It's kind of unusual, but I find that it works really well.
And this is a bit of a custom setup with the creator's spoiler and a C-clamp. If you want to see a detailed explanation on how I set this up, I'll leave a card up on the screen right now to a tutorial we made about copper foiling. And at the end of that video, there's a full kind of guided tutorial on how we set this up. So I'll leave that up right now if you want to go watch that.
This groove is where the glass actually sits right into, centers it up perfectly every single time. So we'll cut off a little bit of that waste part, set the glass into the groove, centering it up perfectly, applying the copper foil, and I'm trying to keep my hands off of the edges as much as possible. We've reached the beginning once again. Go ahead and cut that off, and let's see how even the results are. So I'm going to go ahead and fold this over. I like to fold it up to the next edge, tuck it in under, and then fold it over. Fold it up to the next edge, tuck it in under, fold it over, tuck it in under, fold it over, tuck it in under, fold it over. Now that's a pretty darn good even reveal. This little bit we're going to go ahead and cut with the X-Acto blade. We'll do that at the end. Now we do need to burnish everything. We're going to do that last. First we're going to foil everything. Obviously a really simple but important step. You're just pressing the plastic onto the copper foil to remove any sort of air gaps, any sort of wrinkles. Really, it's best to do the edge first because you don't want to get any air trapped inside of that edge. Do the face. And you want to try to do it in towards the center. You don't want to do it out from the center because you could knock off the foil. So we'll do the edge first and then the face. Now I do prefer to batch these tasks because you don't want to be, probably you don't want to be going back and forth. It can be a bit tedious to do that. For me, I like to just do all of one thing at once and then, maybe take a break or not. Now this foil, when you start to really burnish it down, it's going to make a world of difference. If you try to remove this foil without burnishing it, and then if you burnish it and try to remove it, it is totally different. It's way more adhered. Definitely extremely important step, a must. You cannot skip it. If you do, you're pretty much asking for problems. Some of those problems might be flux getting up underneath the foil. If you do know any other faster ways to copper foil, or maybe whatever your favorite way is, let me know down in the comments, only because I'm always looking to learn new things, and it might be interesting to hear what other people have to say. I definitely know that I can improve. Now, this is a piece that I would say is probably unacceptable. See how there's barely any foil and a lot there? So let's go ahead and take that off. Oh, remember what I told you about after burnishing? Go ahead and remove all that, and we're gonna refoil that spot. Today, we're going to be using a lead-free solder. Let's see. Okay, the first thing we want to do is to secure this and make sure that it is not going to be moving around when we're tacking it down. So we're going to have to tack each joint individually. So what you don't want to see is a lot of white paper in between each piece. So that's pretty good. That's pretty good. Maybe a little bit right there between those two. And we'll put that one, push that one. The reason why I do it like this is this way I don't actually have to cut any pieces of wood. I can use any length and it will secure it down perfectly every single time. We've got my mask. I'm going to be wearing some gloves. Yucky stuff, so we're going to try to avoid touching that. And we also have our fume extractors. This one has a rheostat built in, so we normally solder around 460. That means you can move pretty quick. It's a little bit warmer, maybe than most people. Let's pick out a couple pieces here. Actually have a little bit of foil overhanging here. This is when we overlapped foil, so we're going to want to cut that down. I'm going to want to kind of just make sure there's not like a real rough edge there. And see, that's much better. See how that's not going to be real obvious. We're going to start by tacking this piece together. And this is such a small piece, I'm just going to flex the whole thing. It's so small. This iron heats up very quickly. Let's actually just check it out and see how it's going. See that? We're just tacking the joints where the glass intersects. Not pretty yet. We're just knocking this out, really. We just want for nothing to move on us before we really start. Okay? Now this, I'm actually going to go ahead and heat it up even more because lead-free solder is a little bit harder to use than the 6040. So I like to work at a little bit of a higher temperature. And this way, it will melt quite a lot better. It'll be a little bit runnier, which is kind of the hard part about using a lead-free solder. So now we've got everything tacked down. And we are running a nice bead. We've got a lot of solder there. See, we don't want it to look too flat. Like this is looking way too flat. We want it to have a nice bead. So in order to do that, we have to feed it with solder. Now we don't want too much. See how that's starting to really bubble up? So we need to kind of take that away, take it somewhere else. Now at this point, we actually don't need these forms anymore. And they're sort of in my way. I keep hitting the nails here. So I'm going to take those out. When I'm soldering, I prefer to start from a joint and end at a joint. Now I'm going to say we might need a little bit more flux on here. It's been a little bit since we applied initially. So let's go ahead and reapply. This is so small, I'm just putting it on the whole thing. Really kind of overdoing it, to tell you the truth, but that's okay. Now you see how that is just melting and just adhering to that copper foil much better. We need a little more here. It's a little too flat. Now that I'm pretty happy with. I'm going to go ahead and tin the perimeter. We're going to do an edge bead very shortly. But for now, just a quick tinning, because we have to do it anyway. Here, might as well. So we pretty much have this side done. Now you see it's holding together, fully copper foiled, fully soldered. Woo, it's hot, careful. Flip that bad boy over. All right, now let's take a quick look. I want to make sure I don't have any copper foil, sort of like we saw earlier, but on this side. Woo, that bad boy is hot. I know you can't tell in the camera. Okay, that will do. Got some weirdness right here we want to get out of there. All right, I think that this is pretty much ready to get it soldering. Let's flux it up. Look at those fumes just going right into that fume extractor. That's exactly what I like to see. You do not want to breathe that stuff in, if you want to live a long time anyway. Now you will maybe see some bubbles. That's because there might be some air gaps between the previously soldered side and this side. And you definitely want to probably wear some eye protection. I'm wearing my glasses, so that I would say counts. And if you don't wear glasses, you definitely want to do something to make sure that you are protecting your eyes, because you only get two. All right, we pretty much got this thing done. And if you're making small panels like this, you might want to look into some heat-resistant gloves. You can touch that up, see if we can make it a little bit more like a bead instead of a flat. See if I can kind of do something better here. If you did make it this far in the video, consider subscribing. We have tons of awesome projects coming up, and if you want to see them, you're gonna have to subscribe. So if you made it this far, I would sincerely appreciate it. So we've got the faces tinned. Now we need to do the edge. Actually putting it up against two straight edges that will hold it for me. Because if that solder drips on your hand, it's gonna hurt. Flux it up, you know it. So first off, we're gonna tin everything. And let me definitely turn this fume extractor back on. What I like to do is just slowly tap. We need to clean off the, see how there's a lot of debris in there? Take your little sponge. There you go. Just tap it all the way. This is way too warm, so it's not really beating up. We need to let that cool down a little bit. Needs more flux. Back to this side. Let's see what we can do. Let's flux it up one more time. Just gonna tap that bead all the way across that edge. Go ahead and flex it one more time. And I'm actually going to turn my iron down for this. I don't need it to be so hot. A little bit cooler will not melt it as much, and it'll be a little easier to control. So let's go ahead and do it like that. Now if we have too much solder on there, we'll pick it up with the iron and just wipe it off into the sponge. You can even tap it off. Okay, that side's looking pretty good. We do have a little bit right here. We're going to want to drip that off. See if we can fix that real quick. Let's see. I would call that fixed. Check this side. I think we're good. All right, we got our little panel done. I think it came out pretty good. Let me know what you think. I hope you like this video. If you learn anything, make sure to subscribe. We've got a lot more of these interesting little panels coming up, and we have tons of big projects that we're also working on all the time. So we'll be releasing those. We'll see you in the next one.